Being a doctor was never my dream. That may come out as ungrateful, yet many people aspire to become doctors because it's a noble career. However, it felt like a golden cage to me, a route my parents had selected that gradually stifled my own enthusiasm. I'm Sophia Chin, and for the last 6 years, I've been leading two lives. I am Dr. Chin, the lovely daughter who followed in my parents' footsteps. I'm Aurora Knight, a highly sought-after modern artist in New York who sells works for millions of dollars. Furthermore, neither universe is aware of the other. This morning, as I stood in the freshly refurbished wing of Metropolitan General Hospital, my parents' pride and joy, the absurdity of my circumstances, struck me the hardest. For 30 years, they have both been well-known doctors here. My most recent creation, a huge canvas bursting with color, abstract yet strangely alive, was on display in the main foyer as the hospital unveiled its new Healing Through Art project. It was bought anonymously through my gallery for $2 million. My mother stood beside me, critiquing it with her surgical precision. "I don't understand modern art," she said, wrinkling her nose. $2 million for splashes of paint. The hospital board must be losing their minds. If only she knew those splashes of paint would pay for an entire year of the hospital's pediatric care program. My father joined us, his white coat pristine as always. "At least it adds some color to the place," he muttered, though I would have preferred they spend the money on new equipment. I bit my tongue, remembering the night I created that painting. I had just finished a 36-hour shift at the hospital, and instead of sleeping, I'd gone straight to my secret studio. The emotions poured out of me onto the canvas. The exhaustion, the frustration, the constant pressure to be someone I wasn't. But my story really begins 10 years ago, when I was 18 and dared to dream of attending art school. Absolutely not. My father's voice had thundered through our house, making the fine china in the display cabinet tremble. No daughter of mine will waste her life painting pictures. I stood in our living room, the acceptance letter from the prestigious Art Institute, clutched in my shaking hands, the same hands that had secretly won 3 national youth art competitions under a pseudonym. The same hands my parents wanted to train for holding scalpels instead of paintbrushes. But Dad, I got a full scholarship. They say I'm one of the most promising young artists they've seen in years. My voice sounded small, even to me. My mother sat perfectly straight on our leather sofa, her expression a carefully constructed mask of disappointment. "Sophia, we've invested everything in preparing you for medical school. The extra classes, the summer programs, the NCAT prep courses. This isn't up for discussion." I never asked for those things, I protested, feeling the familiar pressure building behind my eyes. I never wanted. "Enough," my father cut me off. "You think art will give you a stable future. You think you can support yourself drawing pictures? Look at your cousin William. He tried to be creative. Now he's 35 and still living in his parents' basement." "But I'm good at it," I whispered. "Really good." My mother stood up, straightening her already impeccable blouse. "You're good at science, too. Top of your class in biology, perfect MCAT scores, that's not an accident, Sophia. That's your true calling." I wanted to tell them about the paintings I'd sold online, about the gallery owner who'd seen my work and offered to represent me, about the fire that burned inside me every time I picked up a brush. But I knew it wouldn't matter. In their world, success had only one definition, and it wore a white coat. The acceptance letter crumpled in my fist. I had a choice to make. Defy my parents and potentially lose my family, or find another way. That night, I made a decision that would shape the next decade of my life. I wrote to the Art Institute, declining their offer, and I accepted my place at my parents' alma mater, Preston Medical School. But I also sent an email to that gallery owner under my new pseudonym, Aurora Knight. "I'll need to work in absolute secrecy," I wrote. "No public appearances, no photos, no interviews. But I'll keep painting." His response came within hours. Intriguing. Mystery can be a powerful marketing tool. "Send me your next piece, and we'll begin." And so began my double life. By day, I threw myself into medical school, learning about human anatomy with the same precision I used to study color theory. By night, in a small studio apartment I rented under my alias, I created art that began to catch the attention of collectors worldwide. The first year was the hardest. Medical school was as demanding as my parents had promised, and there were nights I thought I would break under the pressure. But somehow, the exhaustion and stress only fueled my art. My paintings became more intense, more emotional. Critics called them raw, visceral, almost surgical in their precision. If they only knew. My first major sale came during my second year of medical school. A triptych that sold for $180,000. I celebrated alone in my studio, dancing silently among my canvas-based creations, knowing I couldn't tell a soul. My parents called that same night, proud that I'd aced another pathology exam. I let them talk, wondering what they'd say if they knew their dedicated medical student daughter had just been hailed as the most exciting new voice in contemporary art. The next few years followed the same pattern. I excelled in my medical studies, earning the praise and approval my parents had always craved. But in the art world, Aurora Knight became a sensation. My paintings sold for increasingly higher prices, and the mystery surrounding my identity only added to their allure. Collectors loved the story, the anonymous artist whose works seemed to capture the very essence of human emotion. "Your technique is remarkable," a prominent critic wrote. "There's something almost clinical in your understanding of human nature, yet your expression of it is pure poetry." I had to laugh at that. If he only knew how many hours I spent studying actual human anatomy. By the time I graduated medical school, I had earned enough from my art to buy a small private island, not that I could ever tell my parents that. Instead, I dutifully accepted a residency position at their hospital, Metropolitan General, while maintaining my secret studio across town. The balancing act was exhausting, but something unexpected happened. I discovered that being a doctor made me a better artist, and being an artist made me a better doctor. My understanding of human anatomy brought a unique perspective to my paintings, while my artistic sensitivity helped me connect with patients in ways my colleagues couldn't quite match. But every time my parents bragged about their doctor-daughter, every time they reminded me how right they had been to push me into medicine, I thought about the painting selling for millions under a name they'd never know. Until this morning, when they stood in their own hospital, unknowingly criticizing their daughter's artwork, worth millions, the same artwork that would fund the pediatric care program they've been fighting to expand for years. And that's when I realized maybe it was finally time for Aurora Knight to step into the light. But I never expected what would happen next. The decision to reveal my identity wasn't made in a moment. It built slowly, like layers of paint on canvas, each small incident adding another stroke to the bigger picture. My father's criticism of the painting in the hospital lobby that morning was just the final layer. What he didn't know was that I had another piece being unveiled that same evening at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Standing in the hospital's sterile hallway, still in my white coat, I checked my phone. 3 missed calls from Marcus, my gallery owner. A text message flashed across the screen. "Major problem with tonight's unveiling. Need to speak ASAP." I ducked into an empty consultation room, my heart racing. "Marcus, what's wrong?" His voice crackled through the speaker, tense with worry. The Times is running a piece on Aurora Night. Someone talked. They're claiming they know your real identity. My blood ran cold. That's impossible. Only you know. It wasn't me, he cut in, but someone at the hospital connected the dots. They've noticed you're never on shift during Aurora Night's major shows. They've linked the anatomical precision in your work to medical training. They're running the story tonight, right before the Met unveiling. I sank into a chair, my legs suddenly weak. 6 years of careful secrecy about to unravel because I'd been careless with my shift scheduling. Can we stop it? I whispered. Not unless you want to confirm or deny on record. They're giving us 1 hour to comment. Through the consultation room window, I could see my parents in the distance, doing their rounds together as they had for 30 years. They looked so confident, so certain of their world and their place in it. I'll call you back, I told Marcus. I had spent years maintaining this divide, the dedicated doctor-daughter and the mysterious millionaire artist. But trying to keep these worlds separate had become like trying to keep oil and water from mixing by sheer force of will. Exhausting, impossible. My pager buzzed. Emergency in the pediatric ward. As I rushed down the corridor, my mind raced through the implications. If the story broke, everyone would know my colleagues, my patients, my parents. The emergency turned out to be an allergic reaction. Scary, but treatable. As I calmed the frightened child with an epinephrine shot, I noticed the walls of the pediatric ward. They were stark white, institutional nothing like the vibrant painting now hanging in the lobby. Doctor, the child's mother touched my arm. Thank you. He was so scared, but you made him feel safe. I looked at the little boy, now breathing normally, clutching his stuffed elephant. In that moment, I realized something. I was good at this, not because my parents had forced me into medicine, but because I brought my whole self to it, including the artists they tried to suppress. I stepped out of the room and called Marcus back. Don't fight the story, I said firmly. In fact, I'll give them something better. Tell them Aurora Night will be attending tonight's unveiling in person for the first time ever. Silence on the other end. Then are you sure? This changes everything. Everything's already changing. Might as well do it on my terms. I hung up and did something I'd never done before. I requested an emergency evening off. My supervisor was surprised. I was known for never asking for schedule changes, but agreed, given my outstanding record. Then I called my parents' office. Mom, Dad, I need you to come to the Metropolitan Museum of Art tonight. There's something you need to see. The museum. My mother sounded confused. Sophia, we have dinner plans with the hospital board. Please, I cut in. This is important. More important than dinner plans. Maybe it was something in my voice, but after a pause, my father said, "What time?" At home, I opened the secret closet where I kept my Aurora Night persona. Unlike my practical doctor's wardrobe, these clothes were all artistic expression, carefully curated pieces that made statements without saying a word. I chose a hand-painted silk dress, one of my own creations. Each brushstroke telling part of my story. As I dressed, I thought about the painting being unveiled tonight. It was different from my others, more personal, more revealing. I had titled it Daughter of Medicine, and into it, I had poured all the complexity of my double life. The central figure was a woman in a white coat, but her shadow on the wall was an artist at an easel. Medical instruments morphed into paintbrushes. Hospital corridors bloomed with color, and throughout it all ran the steady rhythm of a heartbeat monitor rendered in gold leaf. I had created it during a week of night shifts in the ICU, each layer added during stolen moments between rounds, the paint sometimes mixing with my tears of exhaustion. It was both confession and declaration, and tonight it would sell for $3.5 million if the sale still went through after my revelation. My phone buzzed again. Marcus. The Times agreed to hold the story until after the unveiling, but social media is already buzzing with speculation. You're trending. I looked at myself in the mirror. The elegant artist's dress, my hospital ID still clipped to my bag out of habit. For the first time in years, I felt whole undivided. Go ahead, I said. Let them talk. The museum was already crowded when I arrived. The unveiling was the social event of the season, made even more exciting by rumors that the mysterious Aurora Night might actually appear. I spotted my parents near the entrance, looking uncomfortable and out of place in their business attire. They hadn't seen me yet. Behind them, under a velvet drape, waited my painting My Truth. In less than an hour, everything would change. Marcus appeared at my elbow, looking nervous. The press is here in force. Last chance to back out. I shook my head. Not this time. The museum director approached the podium, tapping the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this historic evening. I began moving through the crowd toward my parents, my heart pounding, but my steps steady. Years of hospital emergencies had taught me how to stay calm in a crisis. The director was still speaking. And we are honored to announce that tonight, after 6 years of mystery, the artist known as Aurora Night. I reached my parents just as the velvet drape began to fall. Mom, Dad, I said softly, there's something I need to tell you. They turned, their eyes widening as they took in my appearance so different from their proper doctor-daughter. Behind them, the painting was now fully revealed, and gasps rippled through the crowd. I'm Aurora Night. The words hung in the air between us as camera flashes exploded around us. My mother's face went pale. My father's jaw clenched. And in their eyes, I saw something I had never seen before. Complete and utter shock. But before they could respond, before they could process this revelation, something happened that none of us expected, something that would turn this already momentous evening into a night that would change not just my life, but the entire art world forever. The silence lasted only seconds, but it felt like hours. Then chaos erupted. Camera flashes exploded around us like strobe lights. Reporters shouted questions. The crowd surged forward, everyone trying to get closer to the newly revealed Aurora Night. But I couldn't look away from my parents' faces. My mother's perfectly maintained composure cracked first. This is impossible, she whispered. You're a doctor. I'm both, I said quietly, even as the crowd pressed closer. I've always been both. Then something unexpected happened. Dr. James Morrison, head of the hospital board, pushed through the crowd, his face flushed with excitement. The painting in the hospital lobby, he blurted out. The one we just unveiled this morning that was you. I nodded. His next words changed everything. We have to pull out of the purchase. We can't possibly accept a $2 million donation from one of our own residents. The reporters went wild. Headlines were already forming. Doctor by day, millionaire artist by night. But my father's voice cut through the chaos. Donation. He turned to Dr. Morrison. What donation? Dr. Morrison looked confused. The purchase price of the lobby painting. It was returned to the hospital as an anonymous donation earmarked for the pediatric care program. We thought some wealthy benefactor. His voice trailed off as understanding dawned. My father turned back to me, his face unreadable. How many other paintings? How much? 38 major pieces. Marcus stepped in, ever the efficient gallery owner. Total sales approaching $40 million. Aurora Night is the most successful artist under 40 in the contemporary art world. My mother swayed slightly. Nearby, a senior art critic was practically dancing with glee. The precision in her work, it all makes sense now. She brings a surgeon's eye to her art. Actually, I corrected her gently. I bring an artist's heart to my medicine. That's when the second surprise of the evening arrived. Dr. Sarah Chin, my chief resident, pushed forward, her eyes shining with unbidden tears. "The Williams case," she said. "That impossible diagnosis you made last month, you said you noticed a pattern." I knew exactly what she meant. A young patient had presented with seemingly unrelated symptoms. While other doctors focused on test results, I had noticed something in the distribution of his symptoms that reminded me of a color theory principle, complementary patterns that revealed a hidden hole. "You see things differently," Dr. Chin continued. "That's why your diagnostic grade is so high. You're not just looking at symptoms. You're seeing patterns like an artist." My mother finished softly. For the first time since my revelation, I saw something shift in her expression. The shock was still there, but something else too, a glimmer of understanding. My father remained silent, his surgeon's hands clasped tightly behind his back. I knew that pose. He was trying to maintain control to process everything with clinical detachment. The museum director was desperately trying to restore order to proceed with the official unveiling of Daughter of Medicine, but I barely heard him. My focus was entirely on my father as he slowly walked toward my painting. He stood before it, this man who had never wanted his daughter to be an artist, studying every detail with the same intensity he brought to examining X-rays. I held my breath. "The anatomy," he said finally, his voice rough. "Every muscle, every proportion, it's perfect." "Yes," I said, moving to stand beside him. "Because I learned it from you." He turned to me, and I saw tears in his eyes, something I'd never seen before. "All these years," he whispered, "we thought we were teaching you to be a doctor. But you were learning to be something more." My mother joined us, her hand finding mine. "The painting in the hospital," she said. "You didn't just donate the money. You chose that spot in the lobby because it's where you both stop every morning." I finished. "I wanted to bring some beauty to your daily routine, even if you didn't know it was from me." The cameras were still flashing, reporters still shouting questions. But in that moment, it was just us, a family, seeing each other clearly for the first time. Marcus approached cautiously. "Sophia, the buyers are waiting. The bidding for Daughter of Medicine has already exceeded the asking price. They want to know if you'll still sell." "No," my father interrupted, surprising us all. He turned to face the crowd, his voice carrying with the authority of 30 years in surgery. "This painting belongs in the hospital, next to the other one, where everyone can see what happens when you don't force someone to choose between two halves of themselves." "Dad," I started to protest, "it's worth millions." He smiled, and it was a smile I'd never seen before, part pride, part regret, part wonder. "So is my daughter." The story exploded overnight, of course. Doctor by day, millionaire artist by night became a global sensation. The art world was fascinated by how medical training influenced my work. The medical community was intrigued by how artistic perception could enhance diagnostic skills. The hospital created a new program integrating art therapy into patient care, with me as the director. My paintings now hang in both galleries and hospitals, bridging the worlds I once thought had to remain separate. My parents, they're still adjusting. Sometimes I catch them looking at me like they're seeing a stranger, but more often, they're looking at my work, both medical and artistic, with new eyes. Last week, I found my father in front of the lobby painting, studying it during his morning rounds. "I was wrong," he said without turning around. "When I told you that art wasn't a real career, I was trying to protect you from struggle. But instead, I almost prevented you from becoming who you were meant to be." I stood beside him, both of us in our white coats, looking at the swirls of color that had helped heal not just the hospital's finances, but our family's wounds. "You didn't prevent anything," I told him. "You taught me precision, dedication, and the importance of understanding human nature. I just applied those lessons to a larger canvas than you expected." He laughed a real laugh, free from the weight of expectations. "Your mother's talking about taking art classes, you know. Says she wants to understand your world better." "It was always the same world," I said softly. "I just needed everyone else to see it." I now answer honestly and with a grin when people ask if I'm a doctor or an artist. I'm the type of person who doesn't let the constraints of other people define me. My medication and my art both have healing properties, but they both stem from the same desire to make the world a bit more whole and beautiful. And at last, my parents see that prosperity isn't necessarily a white coat. It occasionally comes painted. My names, Dr. Sophia Chen and Aurora Knight, are now on the plaque in the hospital foyer beneath the artwork, serving as a reminder that we are all perhaps more than the labels that people assign us. All we need is the guts to be ourselves. And a fresh canvas is waiting someplace in my studio, which is no longer a secret. Because my tale doesn't finish here. I'm signing it with my real name for the first time.